The lock wouldn't turn, and Clara Donovan knew that was the universe telling her today would be hell before she even got the door open. She jiggled the key one more time, shoulder pressed against the weathered wood of turning pages, the bookstore that had been in her family for 43 years. The door finally gave way, and she stumbled inside, breathing in the familiar scent of old paper and coffee from the cafe she ran in the back corner. This place was her entire world, every creaking floorboard and overstuffed shelf, a piece of her heart made tangible. The morning light filtered through the front windows, casting long shadows across the poetry section. Clara flipped the sign to open and went through her usual routine, starting the coffee maker, straightening the display of local authors near the register, running her fingers along the spines of books she had memorized by touch alone. She was 27 years old, and sometimes she felt ancient, like she had lived 1,000 lives through the stories that surrounded her. The bell above the door chimed at 9:30. Clara looked up from the inventory sheet she was pretending to focus on and felt her stomach drop. The man who walked in wore a suit that probably cost more than her monthly revenue. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked professionally styled and a jawline that could cut glass. But it was his eyes that made her nervous, sharp and assessing, the kind of eyes that calculated value in everything they saw. "Can I help you?" Clara asked, keeping her voice steady. "I'm looking for Clara Donovan." His voice was deep, authoritative, the kind of voice that was used to getting what it wanted. "You found her." He crossed the distance between them in a few long strides, pulling a business card from his jacket pocket. "Zachary Quinn. I'm a real estate developer." Clara didn't take the card. She knew exactly who Zachary Quinn was. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. He had bought up half the block over the past 6 months, transforming quirky local shops into luxury condos that no one who actually lived here could afford. "We're not for sale," she said flatly. "I haven't made an offer yet. Doesn't matter. This store has been in my family since 1983. My grandmother opened it. My mother ran it. Now it's mine. It's not going anywhere." Zachary's expression didn't change. He set the card on the counter between them. "Everything's for sale at the right price, Miss Donovan. The property value in this area has increased 300% in the last 18 months. You're sitting on a gold mine." "I'm sitting on a bookstore," Clara corrected, "and it's going to stay a bookstore." For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile, but close. Interest, maybe. "I admire loyalty, but sentiment doesn't pay the bills. I've done my research. Your revenue is down 40% from 5 years ago. You're barely breaking even." Heat flooded Clara's cheeks. "How dare you, public records?" He gestured vaguely at the space around them. "This building needs work. The roof, the foundation, the plumbing. You've been patching problems instead of fixing them because you can't afford the repairs. I'm offering you a way out before this place bankrupts you completely." "Get out," Clara said quietly. "Miss Donovan, I said get out. This conversation is over." Zachary studied her for a long moment, and Clara forced herself to hold his gaze even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. Finally, he nodded once, sharp and businesslike. "Think about it. I'll be in touch." He left, and Clara sagged against the counter, shaking. She hated that he was right about the money. She hated that she lay awake at night doing math in her head, trying to figure out how to keep the lights on for another month. She hated that the dream her grandmother had built was crumbling in her hands, no matter how hard she fought to hold it together. The door chimed again, and Clara's head snapped up, ready to tell Zachary Quinn exactly where he could shove his business card. But it was just Mrs. Patterson, one of her regulars, looking for the latest cozy mystery. Clara plastered on a smile and helped her find it, wrapped it carefully in brown paper the way she always did, and wished with everything in her that kindness and stubbornness were enough to save a dying bookstore. 3 days later, Zachary came back. Clara was on a ladder in the classics section, trying to retrieve a copy of Wuthering Heights that had somehow ended up on the top shelf when she heard the bell. She knew it was him before she even looked. The air in the room changed, became charged with something electric and uncomfortable. "We're still not for sale," she called down without turning around. "I brought coffee." His voice came from directly below her. Clara looked down. He was holding 2 cups from the expensive place 3 blocks over, the one that served lattes that cost $8. "I have coffee. I make coffee." "This is a bookstore with a cafe. Yours was closed when I got here. Because it's 7 in the morning, we don't open until 9. Your door was unlocked. That doesn't mean come in and make yourself at home." Clara climbed down the ladder, book in hand, and faced him. He was wearing jeans today, dark and well-fitted, with a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. It was unfair how good he looked. Villains shouldn't look like that. They should look villainous. He held out one of the coffees. "Olive branch." "I don't want your olive branch. I want you to leave my store alone." "Can't do that. But I can buy you coffee while we talk about it like reasonable adults." Clara snatched the cup from his hand, mostly because she had been up until 3 in the morning fixing a leak in the storage room and needed all the caffeine she could get. She took a sip. It was perfect, exactly how she liked it. "How did you know my order?" I asked around. He said it casually, like it was normal to investigate someone's coffee preferences. "That's creepy." "That's thorough." He gestured at the chairs by the front window, the reading nook Clara had set up with mismatched armchairs and a lamp shaped like a stack of books. "Can we sit?" Everything in Clara screamed to say no, to throw him out again, to protect her territory. But there was something different about him today. He seemed less like a shark circling prey and more like a man trying to have a conversation. Against her better judgment, she nodded. They sat. The morning light made his eyes look lighter, more green than gray. Clara forced herself to focus. "I'm prepared to offer you $2.3 million for the property," Zachary said. "That's well above market value. It would set you up for life. You could open another bookstore somewhere else, somewhere with lower overhead and better foot traffic. This isn't just about the money. Everything's about money eventually, not everything." Clara set her coffee down on the small table between them. "My grandmother survived breast cancer twice while running this place. My mother met my father right there." She pointed at the poetry section. "He was looking for Pablo Neruda. She recommended him instead. They were married for 30 years before the car accident." Something shifted in Zachary's expression, softening almost imperceptibly. "I'm sorry for your loss. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you this so you understand that this place is full of memories and moments that matter. You can't put a price on that." "I have to disagree." "The price is $2.3 million, Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're unbelievable. I'm practical." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Look, I get it. You love this place, but love doesn't keep the roof from leaking or the shelves from collapsing. The building is old, it's in disrepair, and you're drowning trying to maintain it. I'm offering you a life raft. A life raft that destroys everything I care about in the process. Change isn't destruction. It is when you're bulldozing history to build luxury condos no one can afford." Zachary sat back, studying her with those sharp eyes. "You really believe that, don't you? That I'm some kind of monster destroying the soul of the neighborhood? Aren't you? I'm a businessman who sees potential where others see decay. These buildings were falling apart. I'm giving them new life. As investment properties for rich people, as homes, Beautiful homes in a neighborhood that's growing and thriving because of the development. They stared at each other, neither backing down. Clara felt her pulse racing, adrenaline flooding her system. She had never met anyone so infuriating in her entire life. "I have a proposition," she heard herself say. Zachary raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening. Read one book, just one, from my store. If you still want to tear this place down after reading it, I'll consider your offer." "That's absurd." "That's the deal. Take it or leave it." He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound transformed his whole face. "You're trying to change my mind with a book. Books change everything if you let them, but I wouldn't expect someone like you to understand that. Someone like me. Someone who only sees dollar signs instead of value." Zachary stood, and for a moment Clara thought he was leaving. Instead, he turned and surveyed the store, hands in his pockets. "Fine. Pick your book, I'll read it, but when it doesn't change anything, we're moving forward with negotiations." Clara's heart leaped. She hadn't actually expected him to agree. She stood too, mind racing through the thousands of options surrounding them. This had to be perfect. It had to be something that would make him understand what he was trying to destroy. She walked through the store, Zachary following a few steps behind. Not poetry, too abstract. Not self-help, too obvious. Not romance, he would never take it seriously. She needed something real, something raw, something that would crack open that businessman exterior and show him what stories could do. Her fingers found the spine before her brain caught up. She pulled it from the shelf and held it out. "The Remains of the Day" by Kazuo Ishiguro. Zachary took it, turning it over in his hands. Never heard of it. It's about a butler in England who sacrifices everything for duty and propriety, only to realize too late that he missed out on actually living his life. It's about what we lose when we choose obligation over heart. Subtle. I wasn't aiming for subtle. He tucked the book under his arm. "How long do I have?" 2 weeks. "Come back and tell me what you think. And then we negotiate, and then we'll see." Zachary moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I hope the book is good. It's been a long time since I read anything that wasn't a contract or a financial report. That's the saddest thing I've heard all week." He almost smiled. Almost. Then he was gone, taking the book and a piece of Clara's hope with him. The next 2 weeks were torture. Clara threw herself into the store, reorganizing sections that didn't need reorganizing, hosting a children's reading hour that only 3 kids attended, staying up late to update the website that barely got any traffic. She told herself she wasn't thinking about Zachary Quinn, about whether he was actually reading the book, or if it was sitting forgotten on some expensive coffee table in whatever penthouse he probably lived in. She was lying. She thought about him constantly. It wasn't that she liked him. She couldn't like someone who wanted to destroy her life's work. But there was something about him that stuck in her mind. The way he looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. The fleeting moments where his businessman mask slipped, and she saw something else underneath. Loneliness, maybe, or exhaustion. She recognized it because she saw the same thing in her own mirror every morning. On day 13, the bell chimed at noon. Zachary walked in carrying the book, and Clara's stomach did a strange flip. He looked different. Tired, maybe, with shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. His hair was slightly messy, like he had been running his hands through it. He was wearing another expensive sweater, this one navy blue, and jeans that fit him in a way that should be illegal. "Well?" Clara asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Zachary set the book on the counter between them. "I hated it." Clara's heart sank. "Oh. I hated it because you were right. Because Steven spends his entire life serving someone else's dream and never once stops to ask what he wants. He loses the woman he loves because he can't admit his feelings. He wastes decades on duty and propriety and being what everyone expects him to be. Zachary's jaw tightened, and when he finally realizes what he has given up, it is too late to get it back. So you understand. I understand the book. I don't understand what it has to do with turning a failing bookstore into housing. Clara came around the counter, closing the distance between them. It has everything to do with it. You are so focused on what makes sense on paper that you are not seeing what actually matters. This store is not just a building. It is a place where people fall in love over poetry, where kids discover that reading can be magic, where lonely people come to feel less alone. That's beautiful sentiment, but it doesn't change the economics. Maybe the economics need to change. They were standing close now, close enough that Clara could see the flecks of gold in his gray-green eyes, could smell whatever expensive cologne he wore. Her pulse was racing again, but this time it felt different, dangerous in a new way. I can't just walk away from this project, Zachary said quietly. I've already invested millions. My investors are expecting returns. My reputation is on the line. So it is not really about what you want. It is about what everyone expects you to do, just like Stevens. His expression darkened. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you did something just because it mattered to you, not because it made financial sense? This is business, Clara, not philosophy. The use of her first name sent a shiver down her spine. Maybe that is the problem. They stared at each other, the air between them thick with tension. Clara could feel her heartbeat in her throat, could see the muscle jumping in Zachary's jaw. She should step back. She should put distance between them. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was. Pick another book, Zachary said finally. What? You said one book. I read it. It made me think. But it's not enough to throw away a multi-million-dollar project. He reached past her, his arm brushing hers, and grabbed a book at random from the display. So pick another one, and another one. Keep trying to change my mind. Why would you do that? Because you are the most stubborn person I have ever met, and I want to see how far you will take this. He handed her the book he had grabbed. It was a collection of poetry. Because maybe I'm tired of only reading contracts. Because that book kept me up for 3 nights, and I can't remember the last time anything affected me like that. Clara took the poetry book from his hands, her fingers brushing his. The touch was electric. This is just going to delay the inevitable, probably, but you're not the only stubborn one in this room. Against all logic, Clara smiled. The remains of the day was just the beginning. I can recommend books that will wreck you. I'm counting on it. He left with the poetry collection, and Clara stood in the middle of her bookstore, heart pounding, wondering what the hell she had just gotten herself into. Over the next month, Zachary came back every few days. He read the poetry. He read The Night Circus because Clara said it was about magic that only works when you believe in impossible things. He read the book Thief because she said he needed to understand what stories meant to people who had nothing else. He read A Man Called Ove because she thought he needed to see that even the grumpiest, most closed-off people could find connection if they let themselves be vulnerable. Each time he came back, they talked longer. About the books at first, then about other things. He told her about growing up in Boston, about a father who built a construction empire and expected Zachary to be just like him, about business school and the first property development that almost bankrupted him. She told him about her grandmother's stubbornness, about her mother's laugh, about how she had planned to be a teacher but came home when her mother got sick and never left. The conversations bled from the bookstore into coffee at her cafe, then into lunch at the diner down the street, then into dinner at the Italian place that had been there since the 70s. Clara kept telling herself it was strategy, that she was just trying to save her bookstore. But her heart knew better. She was falling for him. falling for the way he listened like every word mattered, for the way he argued with her about books with the same intensity he probably used in boardrooms, for the moments when his carefully constructed walls came down, and she saw the man underneath all that ambition. He was brilliant and infuriating and complicated, and somewhere along the way, he had stopped being the enemy and started being something else entirely. It was terrifying. One evening, 6 weeks after that first confrontation, they were sitting in the bookstore after closing. Rain hammered against the windows, and the old building creaked and settled around them. Zachary was supposed to be there to discuss his latest read, but the conversation had drifted, as it always did these days. "My father died when I was 25, Zachary said suddenly. They were sitting in the reading nook, Clara curled in one armchair while Zachary sprawled in the other, both of them holding mugs of tea. Heart attack in the middle of a board meeting. He was dead before the ambulance arrived. Clara set down her mug. "I'm so sorry." "The last conversation we had was an argument about a property deal I thought we should pass on. I said it was too risky. He said I was too cautious. He went ahead with it anyway, and it made the company $3 million. Zachary stared into his tea like it held answers. "I spent the next 5 years trying to prove him right about me, building the business, taking bigger risks, being ruthless when I needed to be. I turned myself into exactly the kind of developer he wanted me to be. Is that what you wanted? I don't know anymore." He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made Clara's chest ache. "I used to love buildings, you know. Not the money or the status, just the actual work of taking something broken and making it whole again. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that part. It all became about the bottom line. It is not too late to remember, isn't it? I've built my entire reputation on being exactly what I am. If I suddenly start making decisions based on sentiment instead of strategy, I'll lose everything. Or you will gain something more important." Clara leaned forward. "Zachary, you have read a dozen books in the last month and a half. Every single one of them is about people choosing between what is expected and what is true. What does your gut tell you to do about this building?" He was quiet for a long time, the rain filling the silence between them. Finally, he said, "My gut tells me that tearing down this bookstore would be the biggest mistake I've ever made. Not because of the money, because of you." Clara's breath caught. "What?" Zachary set down his mug and stood, crossing to her chair. He knelt in front of her, and Clara's heart was a drum in her chest. "I can't stop thinking about you, about this place, about how you look when you talk about books like they're living things that matter. About how you fight for what you love even when the whole world is telling you to give up. I came here to buy a building, and instead I found someone who makes me want to be different. Zachary." His name came out as barely a whisper. "I know the timing is terrible. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear this from. But I'm tired of being like Stevens, of sacrificing what I want for what I'm supposed to do. So I'm just going to say it. I'm falling in love with you, Clara. Maybe I already have." The world narrowed to the space between them, to the rain and the books and the impossible thing he had just said. Clara reached out, her hand shaking, and touched his face. He leaned into her palm, eyes closing for just a moment. "You are supposed to be the villain in this story," she said softly. "I know, I'm sorry. But you are not. You are stubborn and infuriating and too smart for your own good. You argue with me about everything. You made me defend the night circus for 45 minutes because you thought the ending was too ambiguous. It was too ambiguous. Shut up." And then she kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, both of them testing the waters of this impossible thing growing between them. But then Zachary's hand came up to cup the back of her head, and Clara's fingers tangled in his hair, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like falling and flying at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "What are we doing? Something really stupid or really right? I have not decided which yet. I still own the property rights to this building. My investors are expecting me to move forward. I know, if I back out now, I'll lose millions. My reputation will take a hit. I know that too. But I think I'm going to do it anyway." He pulled back to look at her, and the determination in his eyes made Clara's breath catch. "I think I'm going to figure out a way to keep this bookstore standing, even if it costs me everything, because the alternative is becoming someone I don't want to be." "You cannot make that choice for me. I'm not. I'm making it for me because you were right about those books. They changed something in me. You changed something in me." Clara kissed him again, softer this time, a promise of things too new to name. "So what happens now?" "Now we figure this out together." The next 3 months were chaos. Zachary worked 18-hour days trying to restructure his deals. He bought out 2 of his investors at a loss, restructured his finances, and took out loans against properties he owned outright. He hired structural engineers to assess the bookstore, contractors to fix the roof and the foundation, and every other problem Clara had been patching with hope and stubbornness. He poured money into the building that he would never recoup, and every time Clara protested, he kissed her quiet and told her to pick another book for him to read. They became inseparable. Zachary started working from a corner table in the cafe, turning the space into his makeshift office. Clara brought him coffee and sandwiches and books she thought he would love. They argued about business strategy and marketing plans, and whether the science fiction section should be near the front or the back. They closed the store together every night, and some nights Zachary stayed. The 2 of them tangled together in the reading nook, talking until dawn about dreams and fears, and the lives they wanted to build. Clara fell deeper in love with him every day. With the way he listened to her ideas like they mattered. The way he treated her bookstore like it was worth saving not because of her, but because it genuinely was. The way he kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world. He was still ambitious and driven, still argued like every conversation was a negotiation, but now she saw the heart underneath all that armor. He was a man who had spent so long being what everyone expected that he had forgotten who he actually was, and watching him remember was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever seen. The renovations finished on a Tuesday in late spring. The roof was solid, the foundation was secure, and the whole building had been cleaned and restored until it looked like a jewel. All the best parts of its history preserved and polished. Clara stood in the middle of her bookstore, tears streaming down her face, and Zachary wrapped his arms around her from behind. "It is perfect," she whispered. "You're perfect." He turned her around, and the look in his eyes made her heart stutter. "I have something to show you." He led her to the back office, the tiny cluttered space where Clara did all her paperwork. Except it wasn't cluttered anymore. He had cleaned it out, set up new shelves and a proper desk, and on the wall was an architectural rendering. Clara stepped closer, studying the image. It was the building, her building, but expanded. The store on the ground floor, bigger and brighter. And above it, instead of the cramped apartment where she currently lived, there were 2 floors of beautiful living space. Modern but warm, full of windows and light. "What is this?" she asked. "A compromise. I can't build condos here, but I can build up. Luxury apartments on top, bookstore on the bottom. The rental income from upstairs will help subsidize the store, keep it profitable even in slow months." He pointed to the 2nd floor. "This unit would be ours, if you want it." "If you want me." Clara turned to face him, her vision blurring with tears. "Ours." Zachary took her hands and his were shaking. "I know it has only been a few months, I know this is fast, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Clara. I love your stubbornness and your passion and the way you see magic in ordinary things. I love that you made me read books until I remembered why stories matter. I love coming here every day and arguing with you about everything and nothing. I want to build a life with you. Here in this bookstore, surrounded by the things you love. Zachary. She was fully crying now, tears streaming down her face. You don't have to answer now. I just wanted you to know what I'm thinking, what I'm planning for. A future where we don't have to choose between the bookstore and stability, where we can have both. Yes, Clara said. He blinked. Yes. Yes, I want to build a life with you. Yes to the apartments and the future and all of it. Yes, because I love you too, you ridiculous man. You saved my bookstore. You let me save you right back. How could I possibly say anything but yes? Zachary kissed her, deep and sure, and Clara felt the last piece of her heart lock into place. This was what she had been fighting for all along, not just the building but the possibility of love and magic and impossible things coming true. When they finally broke apart, both of them grinning like fools, Zachary pulled something from his pocket. It was a key. I had this made for you. For the apartment, our apartment if you want it. Clara took the key, closing her fingers around the cool metal. When can we move in? Construction starts next week. 6 months, maybe 8. We will have to deal with noise and dust and workers everywhere. I don't care. We will be together. Yes, Zachary said, pulling her close again. We will. The construction was, in fact, terrible. There was dust everywhere, constant noise, and Clara had to relocate entire sections of the store to accommodate the work. Customers complained about the inconvenience, and there were days when Clara wondered if they were insane for attempting this. But Zachary was there through all of it, every frustrating moment and setback. He dealt with contractors and permits and city inspectors. He held Clara when she cried from the stress of it all, and he celebrated every small victory like it was the greatest achievement of his life. They were a team, fully and completely, and even in the chaos, Clara had never been happier. 8 months after that rainy evening when Zachary had knelt in front of her chair, Clara stood in the newly finished apartment and felt her breath catch. It was stunning, all exposed brick and huge windows, with a kitchen that actually had counter space and a bedroom that overlooked the street. There was a reading nook bigger than her old entire apartment, already filled with bookcases that Zachary had built himself, his first attempt at carpentry. They were slightly crooked, but Clara loved them fiercely anyway. What do you think? Zachary asked nervously. He had been anxious all week, wanting everything to be perfect. I think it is home, Clara said simply. They moved in that weekend, which mostly meant Clara bringing boxes of books from her old apartment while Zachary handled the actual furniture. The first night in their new place, they ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and Clara felt so full of joy she thought she might burst. I have something for you, Zachary said when they finished eating. If it is more books, we do not have shelf space. It's not books. He pulled a folder from one of the boxes. It is papers, boring legal papers. Clara raised an eyebrow. Romantic. Just look at them. She opened the folder and stared at the documents, not understanding at first. Then her brain caught up with what she was seeing and her hands started shaking. This is a deed to the building. To your half of the building, Zachary corrected. I'm signing over 50% ownership to you. The bookstore is yours, Clara, legally and officially. I'm just the landlord for the apartments upstairs. Zachary, this is worth millions. I know what it's worth, and I want you to have it, not because I'm trying to control you or the store, but because I want you to know that I'm all in, that this is real and permanent and I'm not going anywhere. Clara set the papers down before she dropped them. She crawled across the floor to where Zachary sat and climbed into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Good, I'd hate to be terrified alone." He held her tight, his face buried in her hair. "I want forever with you, Clara. I want to watch you turn this bookstore into something even more amazing than it already is. I want to argue with you about books every single day. I want to build a life so full of love and stories that we forget what loneliness even feels like." "That sounds perfect." They sat there on the floor of their new home, holding each other, and Clara thought about all the books she had read about love and magic and impossible dreams coming true. She had always believed in those stories, had always known they were real even when the world told her to be practical. And now she was living one, every single day, with a man who had learned to believe in impossible things too. The bookstore's grand reopening was on a Saturday in October, exactly 1 year after Zachary had walked through the door for the first time. Clara had spent weeks planning, sending invitations to every customer on her mailing list, putting up flyers all over the neighborhood. Local authors were coming to read from their work. The cafe was stocked with special pastries and coffee blends. There was going to be a ribbon-cutting ceremony at 10 in the morning, and Clara was so nervous she had barely slept the night before. "It is going to be amazing," Zachary assured her as they got ready that morning. He was wearing a suit, the first time Clara had seen him in one since that very first day, and he looked devastatingly handsome. "Everyone is going to see what I see, that you have built something truly special here." "We built it," Clara corrected. She was wearing a blue dress that Zachary loved, her hair twisted up with a pen stuck through it the way she always wore it when she was working. "I could not have done this without you." "Sure you could have. You're the most stubborn person I know. You would have found a way. Maybe, but it would not have been as good, and I would not have been as happy." He kissed her, soft and sweet, and Clara felt the familiar flutter in her chest that he always inspired. Even after a year together, he still made her feel like a teenager with her first crush. They walked downstairs hand in hand, and Clara's breath caught when she saw the crowd already gathering outside. There had to be 50 people there, maybe more. Customers she recognized, neighbors, even the mayor had shown up. Mrs. Patterson was at the front beaming. The local newspaper had sent a photographer. Clara looked at Zachary, panicking slightly. "There are so many people. They're here because they love what you do, just like I do." He squeezed her hand. "You've got this." The ribbon cutting went perfectly. Clara gave a short speech about her grandmother and the importance of community spaces, and how grateful she was to everyone who had supported the store over the years. She carefully didn't mention how close they had come to losing it all, how Zachary had been both the threat and the salvation. That was their story, private and precious. When she cut the ribbon and opened the doors, people flooded in, exclaiming over the renovated space. The new shelves were beautiful, custom built by a local carpenter. The cafe had doubled in size, with actual seating and a professional espresso machine. There was a children's section with tiny chairs and bright murals on the walls, a cozy area for book clubs. A display of signed first editions that Zachary had helped her acquire from auctions and estate sales. Clara moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and answering questions, and everywhere she looked she saw Zachary. He was helping an elderly man reach a book on a high shelf. He was talking to the mayor about neighborhood development. He was crouched down at a little girl's level, listening seriously as she told him about her favorite princess story. Her heart expanded until she thought it might crack open. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and warm and full of love. The day was a success beyond Clara's wildest dreams. They sold more books in those 8 hours than they usually did in a month. She signed up 17 new members for her loyalty program. 3 local authors asked about doing events at the store. By the time they locked the doors at 6, Clara was exhausted and elated in equal measure. "We did it," she said, collapsing into one of the reading nook chairs. "You did it," Zachary corrected, sitting across from her just like he had that rainy night when everything changed. "I just wrote some checks and argued about whether the mystery section should be alphabetical by author or title. It should obviously be alphabetical by author." "Obviously," he agreed, grinning. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the bookstore settling around them. Then Zachary shifted, looking suddenly nervous. "What is wrong?" Clara asked. "Nothing is wrong. I just have something I want to ask you, and I'm terrified I'm going to mess it up." Before Clara could respond, he was moving, sliding out of his chair and dropping to one knee in front of her. Her heart stopped. "Clara Donovan, you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met." His voice was steady despite the nerves she could see in his eyes. "You took a cynical businessman who only cared about profit margins and taught him to care about stories again. About people. About magic. You fought for what you loved when everyone told you to give up, and you made me want to fight alongside you. This bookstore brought us together, but it is you who made me stay. It is you who makes me want to be better every single day. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring. It was beautiful, a sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, and Clara's vision blurred with tears. "Will you marry me?" Zachary asked. "Will you let me be your partner in this bookstore and in life? Will you keep giving me books to read and arguing with me about endings and building this impossible, wonderful future with me?" "Yes," Clara said, and she was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes to all of it. Yes forever." Zachary slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, just like everything else about them. He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply while she cried happy tears onto his expensive suit jacket. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too. More than buildings and business deals and everything I thought mattered before I met you." They stood there in the bookstore, holding each other, and Clara thought about all the stories that surrounded them. Stories about love and courage and second chances. Stories about people who took risks and fought for what mattered and found their happy endings against all odds. Now they were writing their own story, one page at a time, and Clara could not wait to see how it would end. They got married in the bookstore on a sunny afternoon in May. It was small and perfect, just 40 people, standing among the shelves while a friend officiated. Clara wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair. Zachary wore a dark suit and the same expression of awestruck love he had worn since the day he proposed. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to be each other's home and adventure, to choose love over logic, to keep reading books together until they were old and gray. When the officiant pronounced them married, Zachary kissed her like it was the first time and the 1,000th time all at once, and everyone cheered. They celebrated with cake and champagne in the cafe, and Clara danced with her husband surrounded by books and friends and more happiness than she had ever imagined possible. Their life together settled into a beautiful rhythm. Clara ran the bookstore, expanding their events programming and building partnerships with local schools. Zachary managed the apartments upstairs and slowly shifted his development company toward renovation and restoration instead of demolition, using what he had learned from the bookstore to guide his new direction. They were partners in every sense of the word, challenging each other and supporting each other and loving each other through every up and down. 3 years into their marriage, Clara found out she was pregnant. She told Zachary on a Tuesday morning, sitting in the reading nook where so much of their story had unfolded. He cried, actual tears streaming down his face, and held her like she was made of glass. They spent the next 9 months preparing, turning one of the spare rooms in their apartment into a nursery, arguing about names, reading books about parenting that terrified them both. Their daughter was born on a snowy December evening, tiny and perfect with Clara's dark hair and Zachary's eyes. They named her Grace, after Clara's grandmother who had started it all. Watching Zachary hold their daughter for the first time, Clara felt her heart expand even further. He was so gentle with Grace, so careful, looking at her like she was the greatest miracle he had ever witnessed. He read to her constantly, sitting in the rocking chair with her cradled against his chest, going through bored books and poetry and even novels, his deep voice turning everything into a lullaby. Grace grew up in the bookstore, taking her first steps between the shelves, learning to read curled up in the window nook. She had her mother's love of stories and her father's stubborn determination, and she kept both of them constantly entertained and exhausted. 2 years after Grace, they had a son. James was all chaos and energy, climbing the bookshelves as soon as he could walk, treating the store like his personal playground. Where Grace was thoughtful and observant, James was impulsive and bold, and together they were the perfect balance of everything Clara and Zachary had built together. The years flowed like water, full of small moments that added up to a life. Birthday parties in the bookstore. Christmas mornings surrounded by more books than any family needed. Summer evenings reading on the fire escape while the city buzzed below. Arguments about whose turn it was to deal with the plumbing or close up the cafe or drive Grace to soccer practice. Quiet nights after the kids were asleep, Clara and Zachary tangled together in bed, still talking about books and dreams like they had from the very beginning. The bookstore thrived. It became a neighborhood institution, the kind of place tourists sought out and locals treasured. Clara hired staff to help manage the workload, young people who loved books as much as she did. She started a program for underserved schools, donating books and hosting field trips. Zachary helped her apply for grants and tax credits, using his business expertise to keep the store financially stable while still pursuing its mission. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they took the kids to visit Zachary's mother in Boston. She was a formidable woman, sharp and elegant, and she had been skeptical of Clara at first. But over the years she had softened, especially after the grandchildren came. Now she and Clara had lunch once a month, and she had become one of the bookstore's most vocal supporters. "Your father would be proud of you," she told Zachary one evening while Clara was putting the kids to bed. They were sitting on her back porch, watching the sunset. Not because of the money or the success, though those things matter, but because you found something worth fighting for. Someone worth changing for. He always hoped you would do that. Zachary squeezed his mother's hand, and Clara, listening from the doorway, felt tears prick her eyes. They had all come so far from where they started. 15 years after that first confrontation in the bookstore, Clara stood at the front window, watching the street outside. Grace was 14 now, all long limbs and opinions, reading everything she could get her hands on. James was 12, still wild but developing his father's head for business, already talking about how he wanted to run the bookstore someday. Zachary was in the back, arguing with a contractor about the latest repair, his hair going gray at the temples in a way that made Clara love him even more. This was the life they had built, not perfect but real, full of books and love and the kind of magic that only comes from choosing each other every single day, The bell chimed, and Mrs. Patterson walked in, older now but still a regular. "Good afternoon, dear. Do you have the new mystery that just came out?" "I have it right here," Clara said, reaching under the counter where she had saved a copy specifically for her favorite customer. "I think you are going to love it." As she wrapped the book in brown paper, using the same careful technique her grandmother had taught her, Clara felt Zachary's arms wrap around her waist from behind. "Have I told you today that I love you?" he murmured against her ear. "Only twice. You are falling behind. Unacceptable." "I love you, Clara Quinn. I love you for making me read that stupid book about the butler. I love you for being stubborn and passionate and refusing to give up on this place. I love you for giving me a life I didn't even know I wanted until I found you." Clara turned in his arms, heedless of Mrs. Patterson watching with an indulgent smile. "I love you too, for seeing what this place could be, for choosing us over the easy path, for reading every single book I have ever given you, even the ones you hated." "Especially the ones I hated," Zachary corrected. "They were the most important ones." He kissed her there in the middle of the bookstore, and Clara felt the same thrill she always did when he touched her. After all these years, after everything they had been through, he still made her heart race. This was their story. The billionaire who almost destroyed her bookstore but fell in love with her instead. The woman who saved her family legacy and found her soulmate in the process. The books that changed everything. The love that grew from the most unlikely beginning into something strong enough to last a lifetime. And somewhere in the poetry section, right where Clara's mother had met her father all those years ago, their story lived on the shelves alongside all the others. A reminder that sometimes the best love stories are the ones you never see coming, the ones that challenge you and change you and make you believe in impossible things. Clara pulled back from the kiss, grinning up at her husband. "What do you want to read next?" Zachary's eyes crinkled at the corners, the laugh lines that had appeared over the years making him even more handsome. "Surprise me. You always know exactly what I need." "That I do," Clara agreed, already thinking about which book would be perfect for this moment, this man, this beautiful life they had built together one page at a time. Outside, the city moved and changed, old buildings coming down and new ones going up. But Turning Pages remained, solid and permanent, a testament to the power of fighting for what you love. And inside its walls, surrounded by stories of every kind, Clara and Zachary Quinn wrote their own happy ending, knowing that the best chapters were still ahead. Their story had started with a threat and a challenge, with opposing forces that should never have become anything more. But love, like the best stories, doesn't follow the rules. It finds a way, even when the odds are impossible, even when the ending seems already written. You just have to be brave enough to turn the page and see what comes next. And Clara and Zachary, with their bookstore and their children and their love that had only grown stronger with time, had been brave enough. They had turned the page, again and again, choosing each other through every plot twist and unexpected chapter. And their story, like all the great love stories, would live on in the place where it began, shelved somewhere between possibility and promise, waiting for the next reader to discover that magic is real when you believe in it enough to fight for it. The end.